Broadcasting from Manhattan Beach and the World Wide Web, you're listening to CHSR, HealthyLife.net.
As a service to our listeners, this program is for general information and entertainment purposes only. CHSR, HealthyLife.net does not recommend, endorse, or object to the views, products, or topics expressed or discussed by show hosts or their guests. We suggest you always consult with your own personal, medical, financial, or legal advisor.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Life Bites Radio, where entertainment meets life. Well, today on Life Bites, a wonderful topic, one that is near and dear to my heart. The topic of the power of no. Yes, we will be talking about the power of no. My guest today is David Giuliano. He's a life and business coach of Without Boundaries Coaching, and we'll have him on the show in just a few minutes. And interesting enough, this is a subject that not only is he a colleague of mine, but a personal friend that I've talked to him in depth about, and I think it's a really powerful topic, whether you're a male or female, and I'll get into that in just a few minutes as we talk about it. But first, there are some movies coming out, and the movies that are coming out April 11th, Draft Day. That is Ivan Reitman, he's directing, and Kevin Costner, Jennifer Gardner, Ellen Burstyn, Dennis Leary. I mean, it's an all-star cast. And one of the reasons why I picked this film to talk about is it's on the day of the NFL draft. General Manager Sonny Weaver, who is played by Costner, has the opportunity to save football in Cleveland when he trades for the number one pick. Well, he must quickly decide what he's willing to sacrifice in pursuit of perfection as the lines between his personal and professional life become blurred on the life-changing day for a few hundred young men with dreams of playing in the NFL. The reason why I bring up this movie is it's coming out tomorrow, Friday, April 11th, is that in order to make a decision, you have to either say yes or you have to say no to something. So there's consequences to each choice. So it should be an interesting movie. I'm not familiar. This is a true story. Are you familiar with this guy in the Cleveland?
I'm not familiar specifically with the guy, but I am familiar with the situation of Draft Day, and I've seen the trailers, and I can't wait to see it.
And by the way, that's David Giuliano, our guest. All hour, we're going to be talking about this subject. And then later in the hour, we're going to be talking about dating. David and I have talked about this from time to time in regards to the romance department. And in order to get a yes in life as it relates to romance, you have to be willing to say no. So with that, there is no free lunch. So if you are a person who is naturally open-hearted and generous, no can be an unnatural stretch. So if you're one of those who really longs to be liked, it's even more than a stretch. It can be a cringe. I know that feeling. I've been feeling it for the last couple of years. Unfamiliar, uncomfortable, but very, very necessary, because constant yeses carve little slices, and if little slices, meaning they just carve out these little slices from you, and you keep saying yes, and you keep saying yes, while no is the rock and a shield, there lies the power. And I'm beginning to see this in my own life, but organizational psychologist Adam Grant, author of Give and Take and professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, outs the many professional reward successes that accrue to generous givers. But still, he emphasizes that the ability to say no is one of the most important skills one can have, particularly for givers. So if you're a giver, you need to be listening up here on this show. There comes a moment when you have to say, don't call me, and you finally mean it. You have to return the charming gift because you have forced yourself to acknowledge its invisible strings. When you turn down a friend's request for a helping hand, the colleague's plea for an immediate advice, even a teenage son's expectation that dinner will just appear before him, all because you have goals of your own from which you refuse to be deflected. So all these little yeses we always say, right? So whether trivial or tormenting, each of these moments is an exercise in that poorly understood power, namely the power of no. So there's a lot of talk and a lot to be said for the power of yes, all right? So some people will say, well, if I say yes, well, yes supports risk-taking, the courage and open heart, and that cannot be minimized here. But no, this is a wonderful exercise of oneself and the influence, and is rarely celebrated in our lives, of how much influence it really has when we say no. It's a hidden power because it's both easily misunderstood and difficult to engage. So with that, David, what do you think?
Well, I think that in my experience, personally and professionally, saying no is the biggest thing that challenges us. If you think about how many things just pertaining to health that we say yes to that we probably should say no to. In dealing with business people, I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, David, I wish I could have said no to my kids, to my employees, to my wife, to my parents. And now that I couldn't say no, when I really want to say yes, I can't.
Well, that's powerful because here's the thing. A lot of times we say yes out of guilt, right?
Sure. The best way I ever heard it said was that the more you say yes to the things you really want to say yes to, and the more you say no to the things you really want to say no to, the closer you get to your authentic self. If you think about all the times when you really say yes to the things you really want to say no to, the more you go against what your real truth is, the farther you get away from your authentic self. And I believe it to be very, very true.
And the interesting thing about it is a lot of times you will say yes, right, out of that guilt. And you, like you said, you're getting away from your authentic self. Sure. But the challenge is that guilt is so, it takes lead on what your true feelings are.
Sure, because in so many cases, I mean, even in my relationships with women, it's a condition of acceptance. Yes. And when things are, especially when things are challenging, I can't tell you how many times I said yes to things and totally regretted it later. And the other part of it is understanding that when you say no, you're standing in your truth, and if that person, if it's a condition of acceptance and that person goes, you're still doing the best you can for yourself and for that person. Same thing happens in parenting.
Well, we're going to get into is it easier for men or women to say no in just a few minutes, because you and I both had a very interesting thought about that. But, a lot of times people will look at the power to say no is that it's negative. So negative is it brings up negativity. Would you say that they're different?
I don't see it as negative because I can see where people would. First of all, I can see where people would say that they think it's negative because no one wants to really hear no. Mm-hmm. We're in a generation now. The young ones, the X's and Y's, do not want to hear no.
No. Yes. No limits.
No limits. I mean, and it's a challenge. Yeah. It's a challenge for the boomers, it's a challenge for the parents, the grandparents, and it's a bigger challenge for them. And they're just starting to see it as they're entering the real world, and people are saying, or society is saying no, and they don't really know how to deal with it very well.
Well, it's kind of interesting because there was some research, and I'm trying to find it here. It's talking about how the brain, we are wired in our DNA, that we're wired to hear positive influences, and we actually respond to those in a positive way. But the minute we hear no, we actually start to shut down. So we're not even wired for the no, and we're also, we take it as an instant negative. And doesn't mean that it is, But one of the things I know for myself, the more I start to say no, one of the things I had to realize is I have to be okay with somebody's disappointment. Because a lot of times when you say no, you will get some type of reaction.
Absolutely. Think about the reaction you have to yourself when you're standing in front of the refrigerator at 10 o'clock at night and you're feeling like you want something sweet and you have to say no to yourself.
Yes, and I think there's a distinguished factor here. There is the power of no for yourself, learning your own limits and boundaries. And then there's the power of no when we're talking about other people. So let's bring it home to ourselves, because I think that's an important part of learning how to say no, is putting your own boundaries on yourself. And a lot of times we may say we're going to say no, but in that moment when you want that something sweet, right, it's hard to say no.
Yeah, it's the same, Nina. You got to feel through the feeling. It's the same thing that happens when you say no at 10 o'clock in front of the refrigerator. What happens in 10 minutes? You feel through what you got to feel through, and you don't have the ice cream or whatever it was you're going to have, and what happens? It passes. Well, the same thing happens when you're in a relationship and you say no. You feel through the feeling of disappointment or maybe, negativity from the kid who's not happy that you're saying no, or your significant other, you're saying no. What happens? In a few minutes, you both feel through it, there's a conclusion, and you move on. It's the
interesting.
Same.
Yeah, it is interesting that they really are the same. The key here is, are you willing to feel the uncomfortableness that a no puts on yourself or somebody else?
Sure. I mean, a great question to ask yourself is, what is your relationship with the word no? And the reason that with anything in life, if you want to do a quick check on what your feelings are, we're in relationship with everything. We're in relationship with nature. We're in relationship with money. We're in relationship with people. We're in relationship with our feelings. And when you start to look at what that is, and you say to yourself, well, what's my relationship with the word no? Oh, it means this, it means this, it means this, it means this. Okay, well, I can make it mean this and this and this, and it just depends on choice. If you come from a family where no was never an option and everybody said yes, when people say no to people like that, I've seen it. It levels people. I came from a background where there was a lot of no, and and I always worked. I think the negative part is where there's too much no, and it gets in the way for fear. And I think that's the other part where parents can kind of get in the way of their fear and say, no, I don't want my kid to play football because I'm afraid they're going to get hurt. When you throw fear into it, when you project your fear into that, that's where the negative connotation comes.
Well, I think that's important, because how much no is too much. And what I hear you saying is that if it is something that is creating fear in you, then that is something that, or somebody else, then you got to watch that, where that no is coming from. I remember my mom, she would always say no initially, and always get her to say yes. But the no was the initial reaction, right?
Sure.
And then so there was a pattern there. But I also knew how to manipulate to the yes. But the other thing, yes, we learn young. Yeah. So one of the things also is that I think the other thing to think about when no is too much is that, is there a line between no and you're being self-actualized and you're taking care of yourself, and no being selfish? What do you think about that?
I think that's a great question.
Because I know people that say no, and their no isn't out of fear necessarily, but there is a self-serving ability when they say no. There's not really a generosity of spirit.
Well, I think it just depends on when it comes down to it, like really what's important to you. I mean, when you ask people
yourself.
Well, when you ask people what their relationship with money is, if you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers. And the same thing happens with the word no. I mean, when somebody says no to me, now what I do is I used to take it maybe as a rejection, and now the way I look at no is, you know what, it wasn't supposed to happen. And it's not that I just flop but it's like I have a different awareness. Instead of saying I had this agenda and I really needed this yes, and I had all this emotion or all this feeling on, maybe it was closing a client or making sure that I was going to have this date or whatever. What I do now is I come back and I go, you know what? Maybe what I have isn't for that person, and so my that no to me can be a gift. I mean, we talk about it all the time, Nina. We'll talk about it later in relationships. Sometimes the best no that you ever get is the best gift you ever get.
Isn't that the truth? But that's interesting because I think that's the key. I know when I see people that can draw their boundaries really well without a lot of story behind it, and they just say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Right.
Even that will ting me a little bit, and it might be whatever my filter is, but like you, I'll go, they're just saying no because they can't do it. You almost have to reframe it in your mind, because here's the key here. If you're used to being rejected, if you're used to being the people pleaser, if you're used to getting what you want when you want it, whatever your story is, and somebody tells you no, there's a boundary there. And that boundary rubs up against whatever pictures and whatever triggers you have. And I think that's a real important part here, because a lot of times we don't want to go to the no, because it brings up that uncomfortableness.
I believe it does. But, Nina, I think if you look at the best leaders, if you go back in history and you look at the best leaders are the leaders who are willing to disappoint you, are willing to go there and say no, are willing to say, I'm not going to acquiesce to make you guys feel better because I know this is the right direction for the country or the company or the family.
Mm-hmm. And that's not always easy to do, because you have to stand up sometimes against, the majority.
Right. But if you think about what they do is they stand in their truth. They're authentic. They might be right or wrong, but at least they're authentic. If we can do exactly the same thing, it goes back to what I was saying before. When you can stand in your truth and be willing to lose that, lose that woman who I'm saying, no, I'm not taking you to that fancy restaurant, or I'm not buying you that.
Darn.
And if you leave me because I'm not going to do it, I'm still going to stand in my truth.
Damn. Sorry. I wanted to go to dinner. So, no, I get it. I totally get it. Is that you have to be willing to deal with the consequences of that no. And so does the other person.
And the other part of it is when you throw love into the equation, Nina, it makes the pressure go 100 times more. I have friends who have children now, and they never say no to their kids, and they say to me all the time, I go, you guys, you're creating a monster. And they go, David, you don't have children. You have no idea. It's just too hard for me to say no. I can't do it. And I get it, because I've been there in my love relationships. But with parents, I think you can just, go 100 times higher.
Yeah. And then the consequences, because it's not like you can break up with your kids.
Right.
So 5 situations where no is good is when it protects you from a cheerful exploitation by others. So it's remarkable how much some people will ask of you, even demand of you, things of which yourself wouldn't even dream of asking. So, for example, take a classic school, an office scenario. A happy, popular slacker colleague asks to borrow her worker bee's teammates' careful notes. Well, Mr. Worker Bee or Ms. Worker Bee resents being used, but can't think of a good reason to refuse. So he or she acquiesces. Gets asked again, resents more. Can't think of a good reason to say no, so he or she gives in, and so the cycle goes on and on. Finally, paying attention to his or her own feelings of being taken advantage of, instead of focusing on finding a reason acceptable to the cheerful exploiter, Worker Bee turns to Mr. Popular and then develops a backbone and says, no, I'm not comfortable with that. How many of us can say no without giving a reason? So think about that. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in just a moment. I'm Nina Bosky. My guest is David Giuliano, coach of the founder of Without Boundaries Coaching. Let's get that right. And we are talking about the power of no. We'll be back in just a moment.
See straight and save. These days, everyone seems to see things differently. But from your eyes, you can see straight and save. Right now, get glasses online at 70% off at Glasses USA. There's a 100% guarantee, too, on top brand men, women, multifocal, and even prescription sunglasses. Visit HealthyLife.net's advertiser page and click on Glasses USA, and you will see straight and save.
For all your live or pre-recorded webcasting needs, come to earthchannel.com. Get your web-based message out to a select group or the whole world. It's easy. A pioneer in webcasting, earthchannel.com provides the best products and services to big corporations and government users. And now, this same technology is available to you. They have the best earthcasting coders, servers, and products to meet your technical needs. But wait, don't want to mess with technical stress? No problem. They'll do it for you. earthchannel.com is your answer. You can use webcasting for lots of things, like advertising, marketing, customer support, training, and don't forget, web radio and TV. In fact, you're listening to a live Earthcast right now, so come to earthchannel.com. Actualize your audio or video webcasting needs today. You can't beat the friendly service or the price. Call earthchannel.com at 800-849-8978. That's 800-849-8978.
Okay, you're stressed. You need a little R&R. Wouldn't go into a spa help? There's all kinds of spas, too. Destination spas, medical spas, day spas, even dental and mobile spas. Where do you find the right spa at the right price? Oh, no, more stress? Well, not anymore. Visit spafinders.com. At spafinders.com, you'll find everything you need to know about spas from around the world. So de-stress. Click on spafinders.com right on our homepage. Oh, I'm feeling relaxed already.
We're HealthyLife.net, reaching and helping a worldwide audience without hype, without shock, and without shenanigans.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Life Bites Radio, where entertainment meets life. We are talking about the power of no. My guest is Coach David Giuliano. He's the founder of Without Boundaries Coaching. A great quote from Brené Brown. She has a wonderful book out there. If you have not read it, I highly, highly recommend it. It's called Daring Greatly. So her quote, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. That's the key. I, for the longest time, could not say no because I didn't want to disappoint somebody. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I felt responsible for somebody, and it was very hard to get to a point, and still is. I mean, I can do it, but I do it with, there's an uncomfortableness about it. The more attached or bonded I am to the person, the more difficult it is to say no.
Sure. So, Nina, think about it, though. As you have started to say no, the question I want to ask you is, how has those relationships changed in your life?
For the better. For the better. But I do have to say that going through each and every one of those no's, though, in my life with a specific person or experience, initially brought up a lot of uncomfortableness, a lot of pushback from the other person. So I had to be willing to be able to allow that pushback not to be popular, not to be liked. And I am going through it, as you know, in my personal life with a friendship of mine that I've known for, since first grade. And I am being called every name in the book because I'm saying no.
Sure. Well, whenever we try to change something we've been doing our whole lives.
Yeah, especially since first grade.
Right. It's going to challenge us.
Yes. Yeah.
And, and like everything, Nina, I would say to you that if you stand in your truth, and you and I talked about this a little earlier, standing in your truth and watching those people react around you is also scary, but it's also, if you think about it, it's also what they need to do. It's a part of their process, and that's hard too, especially when you're watching somebody you love do something that maybe is destructive or self-destructive, and you may even have the power to change that, or the power to influence it, yet standing in your truth and saying that person needs to do what they need to do really trumps all of it. And that's where you look at where the agenda goes from theirs and their process, and how, when you can see how much it impacts your life. To me, that's the gift for you. It comes back to, which is when you stand outside and you feel through it, you can see, oh my God, this is what's been happening since I was a child. This woman has had this impact on me my whole life. Look at how hard it is. And so as you start to re-choose yourself, which is what you're really doing by saying, I'm not gonna say yes, the process becomes fully theirs. And as that does, it helps them move. And
well, you're making a really good point. You're listening to Life Bites Radio. My name is Nina Bosky. We're with David Giuliano, Without Boundaries Coaching. We're talking about the power of no. And one of the things that you're bringing up is so important and so key. And this is important for anybody that you love, that you say that you love. And I have done this, and I'm in the process of changing it, and it's challenging, especially for the people that we love the most. We'll say to ourselves, so we don't have to feel uncomfortable, oh, well, I'm doing this for them, or they're going to be on the streets, or I can't say no because then he won't have a car, or she won't be able to go to school, or she won't have any whatever food to eat. Whatever it is, we always put it on the other person a lot of times because we don't want them to feel bad. We're helping them. But in really what we're not doing is we're not allowing ourselves to feel uncomfortable. And by saying no, we're actually loving them more than if we give in to their demands and manipulations. And I can't tell you how many times I would say yes, not because I thought I was really helping that person, but because I didn't want to feel that uncomfortableness.
Absolutely. I see it with my friends and their children all the time. And it's interesting to watch because you can see it unfolding. A child will do something that's uncomfortable, or with one of my friends, the boy got not a good grade on his homework, and it was because he didn't make the effort, and he got a C, and he had a meltdown. And so now that happened early on in his life, and now his mother is on him every day, just grinding on him, and then it got to the point where they started to fight. And what happened was the dad stepped in and said, let him fail. Let him not do his homework and let him feel the disappointment. And watch, and I could see the mother, who's a very close friend of mine, shivering because it was too hard for her to stand back, and she just basically dismissed what he said, and she just got. But
that wasn't because of her wanting him to succeed. It was because she didn't want to have to feel that uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, she, obviously. I
don't think she doesn't love him.
Yeah, she's a great mom, but you could see it was way more about her and her uncomfortableness than it was about him.
So much of that it really is. The other thing that we had talked about, and we mentioned it because I wanted to wait for the show. You and I were talking about this topic, the power of no, and you came up with the fact that you thought that it's much more difficult for men to say no than women to say no. And I said, oh, no. My thought process is that it's more difficult for women to say no than men to say no. So why do you say what you say?
Because I think women are used to being in their feelings a lot more than men. And it may seem like... it may seem to you that it's easier for women, but it's not. Men are not in their feelings, and what happens if you think about what we just said? Whenever a man has to say no, and his feelings are on the line, he's going to say yes because he doesn't want to feel. As men, we don't want to feel those feelings. We're just like, let's fix the problem and go. Women, they have a problem or they have something going on. There's that whole thing about what, men, we just want to fix it for you because we love you. That's
so I agree from that perspective.
Right.
But I can't tell you how many women would not so much not agree with what you just said, because I think they would agree with that. But what they wouldn't agree with is that we are a group of people pleasers. And so our number one goal is to nurture. So we will nurture somebody else over ourselves. And so that does not allow us to say no a lot of the times.
No, I think it's exactly the opposite of what you just said, which is the reason we're doing it is because what's at stake for us is that connection. So we are nurturing ourselves.
No, but I'm saying to you is that women would take that and say they don't know also how to say no. We have to take a break. We're going to continue our discussion not only of the power of no, but we're going to bring in men and women and romance. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to Life Bites Radio.
When you need quality auto parts, Auto Part Warehouse is fast and easy. Always get the part that fits. Just enter your vehicle type specific to your car. Auto body parts, mirrors, brakes, suspension, steering, engines, and drivetrain. Need something yet? What about exterior or interior accessories or headlights? Auto Parts Warehouse has them. Top brands, great prices. Visit HealthyLife.net's advertiser page and click on Auto Parts Warehouse.
If you're in Southern California, you might want to consider HealthyLife.net radio for advertising. We have 18 hosts that have shows with loyal listeners just in Southern California. That means you get local advertising and the world for the same affordable price. With packages for every budget, you can't afford not to let that economic sun shine in for your business. Call now 1-800-555-5453. That's 1-800-555-5453.
To be a good father is the most important job in a man's life. But it doesn't have to be hard. Play catch. Go to a park or visit a zoo. Help your child with their homework. Sit down together for dinner. Ask them how their day was. Things get busy, and sometimes we all fall short. But the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Learn more at 1-877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
For more than 20 years, Homeboy Industries has made a difference in the lives of former gang members and at-risk youth in Los Angeles. Their free programs and services have given hope and opportunity to thousands in their signature businesses: Homeboy Bakery, Homegirl Cafe and Catering, Homeboy Silkscreen and Embroidery, and Homeboy Merchandise. Offers hands-on training in a safe work environment. Donate to Homeboy today and help them continue their important work. To find out more, call 323-526-1254 or visit online at www.homeboy-industries.org.
HealthyLife.net, the positive radio network.
All right, you're listening to Life Bites Radio. I'm Nina Bosky, where entertainment meets life. My guest all hour is David Giuliano. He is the founder of Without Boundaries Coaching. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Without Coaching Boundaries. Without Boundaries Coaching. So we have been talking about the power of no, and we were talking about men and women, but we want to give you just a few tips. David, you had the first tip.
Your payoff in integrity and autonomy, however, is huge. The choice on the table is clear. Strengthen your ability to say no while lowering its cost to your relationships. Several strategies can help you achieve this balance.
All right, so one of them is replace your automatic yes, right, with I'll think about it, right? And I think that's a really important one because a lot of times when somebody says something to me, they'll say, oh, Nina, do you want to do that? My first inclination is to say yes. Right. And so now what I'm doing is I'm taking that step back, and I'll say, you know what, let me get back to you tomorrow, or let me think about it, or let me check my schedule. But I think that's an important thing to give yourself time to process, especially if you're a yes person like me. If you're a yes person like me. So the other thing that I think is important is to soften your language, because a lot of times what ends up happening is, like, for example, you don't have to say a harsh no, because sometimes when we are learning to do something, we go from one extreme to the other. And so we'll say, no, I can't do that. And then the other person feels that disappointment. So what I do is I always try to couch it with something that's positive or validate them.
Yeah, I think you can say no in many different ways, and I think it's really important, the subject of softening the no. I think with parenting, sometimes parents get frustrated because they don't want to explain to a child why it's no. It's, the old school is no.
Because I told you.
Because I told you no. The newer school is everything is yes, but when you have to say no, I think parents are much better at explaining now to children, it's no because you're already, you have too many activities, you're already tired, you're already, you're already maybe a little overwhelmed, you have 3 hours worth of homework, and I just think it's a little much for you to be taking this on. So it's just a really good way to communicate. And the same thing happens in all relationships. I mean, in law firms that I work with, it's the same. When somebody is told no, they have an idea about something, or they want to do something, or they're trying to organize something. If they get the big hand in the meeting that just no, it's not up for discussion, what happens then is people shut down. And I've seen it a million times where employees go, David, I have all these great ideas, but I'm not going to share them because every time I do, I just get no, and or a negative response. And what happens with people is they shut down, as opposed to saying, let me listen to what you have to say, even if the answer is no. It's okay. You listen to the person, you validate what they said, and you go, I'll take it under consideration. Or maybe it's no because of this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. It invites the people to come back the next time, and if you have another idea about another way we can do it, or work around those issues, it keeps the dialogue open and keeps the people open.
Yeah, because the reality is that if you soften your language, it does two things. It helps you, but it also helps the other person receive it. So here's just a couple of tips. David was talking about being authentic, so make sure you're authentic. Number two, replace your automatic yes with I'll think about. Give yourself room to come back and really be authentic to yourself. So that way you know whether you want to say yes or you want to say no. And then the third tip is just to soften your language around it, because that way it allows you to be receptive. So speaking of soft, let's talk about the feminine and the masculine, males and females, lovely relationships in terms of love. So we've picked a couple of topics here, and one of them is, so if you want to attract the most quality person in your life, then you have to set a standard, and that means being the best person you can be, right?
Absolutely.
So let go of the expectations of others and yet set quality boundaries. The cream will rise to the top if you are what you want to attract. But here is where it gets tricky or delusional. Most people project or accept the delusion of who they really are when deep down their greatest fear is, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Will I be liked? Taking this a step further, have you noticed a sense of entitlement by those who are single and looking for love? As if they were so wonderful, everybody should just love them. So what do you think about that?
Well, I have a great... let me just tell you a really brief story, because I think it will. It's very interesting. When I was divorced about 17 years ago, and I had not been. A lot of my friends were married, and so I hadn't dated for a long time. I was with my wife, my ex-wife, for almost 9 years altogether, and so what I did was I joined a dating service. And so when I joined the service, I got really friendly. They assigned a woman to kind of, my caseworker, if you will. And actually, they were the ones who picked other people. And it was an organization that made it so that we would go and meet for a drink or lunch. And it was, that's how it worked. And it was very interesting because she said to me, once we started getting friendly and really honest, she said, a lot of people believe because they're paying us this fee of $1,500 or whatever it was for the service, that they should get somebody better than they can get on their own. In other words, and
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And
I've got to get my $1,500 worth.
Right. And I said, so what's your biggest challenge? And she said, honestly, David, she says it's getting people honest with what they think they can get. which is the reason I told you this, which is, she said it's not that we don't want to meet expectations. She says, and we don't want to devalue people, but we want to, we want to make sure that, getting them kind of grounded a little bit so we can get some stuff done here. Getting them traction, she said, can be quite difficult.
Well, Sherry from Facebook says, water seeks its own level, and we do not attract what we want. As they say, we attract who we are. Yep. So we are going to ask Jay Cruz, our producer, to join the conversation, because I think this is kind of interesting. It's a question for you guys. Is it okay for a woman to ask a man out? Okay? A lot of times women get this in their head that, no, men have to be the hunters. They have to be the one that asks us out, and it can't be. But the rule out there from one of the male coaches in the Life Bites Network says that, if you start with friendship, it's really okay for a woman to ask a man out. What do you think, Jay?
I don't know. I think it's always been okay for women to ask men out. I know it's not traditional role in society, but in my generation's time growing up, it's kind of been more common, and I think it's okay. I think sometimes people might sort of start hanging out as friends, and it might sort of drift to being comfortable and familiar with each other and enjoying each other's company and doing things that, sometimes couples do, which might send off the unquestionable or sometimes untenable position of being slid into the friend zone. And sometimes we don't want to do that, because then it's harder to kind of get back out after that if romance is going to be a possibility or if romance is going to ensue.
But let's say you've never met them before and you're like just approaching it as, hey, we might be friends, we might be something more.
I know it's definitely okay in that situation. You pretty much avoid the friend zone, and it's good because then intentions are kind of more out in the open, and there's less of the guessing game and knowing if maybe someone's attracted to you or likes you or is even open and single and available even for a relationship, and that way you can kind of move ahead with all the things that go on there, like planning getting romantic or starting those things out. But it's also maybe good to somewhere along the way, possibly as a date topic or something like that, discuss maybe some of the other maybe non-traditional roles that one might do. Maybe they're a little bit more adventurous or into extreme games or adventuring or something like that I wasn't expecting. Maybe they're a little too crazy. I don't know.
Well, and that's kind of cool. So what do you think, David?
I think it's totally fine. I think, especially now where women are wanting to lead in so many different ways, I think that it'll be interesting to see. I think if that happens, I think it's a great gift to us men, but I also believe that it's an opportunity then for us to after that happens, for us to lead, because I think that's initially what women really want moving forward. So, but I'm totally comfortable with it. I think it's where life is going.
So interesting enough, kind of what I hear you say, and we can continue the conversation after the break, is that it's okay to ask out, but if they continue leading, then we might get into kind of hot water because they're leading the show.
Not kind of. Very hot.
On that note, we might get to the power of yes. You're listening to Life Bites Radio, and we'll be back after these moments.
Shh! Over here. Here's a secret for a virus-free computer. ESET. They've been a pioneer in the antivirus industry for over 25 years. 25 years of innovative, top-rated antivirus protection. ESET's award-winning security solutions provide a safe online experience for over 100 million home and business computer owners. They are so affordable, fast, and simple to use. So be gone, you blue screen of death. ESET's on my computer. If it's not on yours, visit HealthyLife.net's advertiser page and click on ESET now.
For all your live or pre-recorded webcasting needs, come to earthchannel.com. Get your web-based message out to a select group or the whole world. It's easy. A pioneer in webcasting, earthchannel.com provides the best products and services to big corporations and government users. And now this same technology is available to you. They have the best Earthcast encoders, servers, and products to meet your technical needs. But wait, don't want to mess with technical stress? No problem. They'll do it for you. EarthChannel.com is your answer. You can use webcasting for lots of things like advertising, marketing, customer support, training, and don't forget web radio and TV. In fact, you're listening to a live Earthcast right now. So come to EarthChannel.com. Actualize your audio or video webcasting needs today. You can't beat the friendly service or the price. Call EarthChannel.com at 1-800-849-8978. That's 1-800-849-8978.
Use Royal Essence Organic Bulgarian Rose Water and stress will melt away. Emotions become balanced. Skin will be healed, moisturized, and tightened. Produced in the Valley of Roses in Bulgaria, Royal Essence Organic Bulgarian Rose Water comes from the highest quality rose oil in the world. For thousands of years, rose water has been prized for its cosmetic and medicinal purposes, and now you can get the best. Visit RoyalEssence.com or call 949-357-9389. That's 949-357-9389.
If you're in the UK, you can have a healthier pet for less by going to Pet Supermarket. Whether you have a dog, cat, bird, fish, reptile, or other small pet, you can get everything you need for your pet for less. They have the brands you know and trust. You can even buy gift certificates and doggy clothing and apparel. Get your pet everything they need from nose to tail. Visit HealthyLife.net's advertiser page and click on Pet Supermarket now.
You're listening to CHSR, Real Radio on the web.
Hi, you're listening to Life Bites Radio. We are talking all hour about the power of no. We're also talking about romance and how that might apply in relationships. And it's kind of interesting. So my guest is David Giuliano. He's the founder of Without Boundaries Coaching. And I also have Jay Cruz, our producer here for Life Bites, talking about this because it's always interesting to get the male point of view. So before the break, we were talking about whether it was okay to ask a man out as a woman if it's okay. And both guys said yes, as long as there in some way there's some type of conversation. So my other question to you guys, this is kind of interesting. Is monogamy just in our bodies? What about our minds? So let's face it, if most men were truthful, they would tell you that even in their most loyal of relationships, they might think of sex with another woman. It's in our DNA. So ladies, quick question. If a man fantasizes about another woman while having sex with you, is he cheating in your book? What does exclusivity mean in mind, body, and heart? Thoughts?
Well, a lot of people think differently or the whole gamut of thoughts on that. I think, number one, it's probably extremely unlikely or almost impossible to assume that someone won't be attracted to another person at some point in their life or even have a fantasy about someone, someone who's a celebrity or a good-looking someone that they've seen or maybe a past love of something that was really good. But once you start, going there constantly and kind of, are now having fantasies at all the time that you're maybe having sex or intimate relationships with your partner, I think you're at least kind of crossing a threshold and maybe buying a ticket to Cheatsville or at least going to the airport or packing your luggage. You're starting to entertain thoughts of other people or other fantasies, and there's something that maybe in the connection between you and your partner that's just not there. So I definitely think it's hard to not be attracted to someone, but if you start incorporating fantasies without involving your partner and making that part of your relationship, I think it could be construed as cheating or something like that.
So Toya says that I think it's unrealistic, this is from Facebook, to think that anyone, male or female, will not lust or desire someone else sexually. Monogamy is a choice to be with one person, not a choice to only think about being one person.
I disagree. And the reason I do is because I know how complicated our minds are. And I know how thoughts come into our minds, they come and they go. And we have a choice about what we're going to make them mean. I want to clarify. Obviously, if it happened all the time, I would agree with Jay. There's a bigger issue there. But it's human nature. I mean, thoughts come into our mind all the time, and we always have that choice about what we're going to make things mean. And sometimes those other, if you want to get really deep about it, sometimes it's meant to if we're having those thoughts, maybe it's coming into play so we don't feel so deep. Maybe it's coming into play so we don't let ourselves get hurt. So we our mind brings somebody else in to throw us off course.
So Ella from Facebook says, it goes both ways, males and females. Yep. I fantasize. I haven't told my partner about this, about Matthew McConaughey all the time. So in your opinion, then, David, that would be a problem.
Well, I think it becomes a problem if it's like what your condition of acceptance is. It's like my whole thing would be if I really didn't want to be with that person, then I would hope that that I would step up to the plate and say, hey, you know what? I just can't get this person out of my mind. I think it's no different than maybe even being in a past relationship where if you've been with several partners and and I've heard people say it, I had incredible sex with that person and I just can't shake it, or they come up when I'm intimate with somebody else. It's a part of life. It's a part of what happens, and I think some of it really gets in the way for people and some of it doesn't.
So Michael says, I think that if we're going to be honest, monogamy is a choice, and everyone, men and women, fantasize about sex with another person at a different time in their lives.
Absolutely.
To put a little title of bad or good or wrong or right is impossible. So why not just play with it into a fantasy? In your love life, put on an Indiana Jones hat or a Sandra Bullock wig and make a date out of it. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that, monogamy is a choice. I think that if you have a sexual thought about somebody or having that kind of, passing fantasy is not a bad thing. But if all of a sudden you're bringing it into your everyday relationship, then I think, okay, something's going on here. Sure. If I have to put Matthew McConaughey in front of my partner, then there's a problem. Yeah. So another thing is, and this is another question, and it has to do with online dating. Now, Jay, have you done online dating before?
I have, and I've retired.
You've retired, okay. David's done it. I've done it. I've met the guy that is my love, and I'm very surprised about it. So this is what it says. It says that, a lot of people dislike online dating, okay? But it's impossible to meet and fall in love through an online dating site, okay? So if you are one that is looking for love, the statistics say that over 40 crowd, 2 out of 5 people in all of their relationships are met online, right? Mm-hmm. So, but a lot of women say, where are all the good men? Okay? They say they're not online, they're not anywhere, right? So online dating is not necessarily, there's a lot of dislike. I know you said you retired. What's your reason for retiring?
I sort of had to hang up the online dating thing. It was sort of fun for a while, and then it got to be a little much. I think, number one, I was trying to be sort of just not a jerk and try to at least answer back people who answered emails, and then that led to maybe too much expectations, or people maybe thought I was leading them on and was interested when I was just trying to not be non-neighborly, I guess, and not, returning a wave or a honk of the horn. I did go on a couple dates. A couple were actually pretty nice. Met at least a couple friends out of it, and then really there was one bad apple that sort of spoiled the whole bunch. We had sort of gone out, and it was an okay date, but then like a day or two later, she was texting wanting me to come over, and then actually got a little perturbed when I had left my phone at home to recharge as my neighbor's watching football, and then that 2 to 3 hours of watching. Actually, the Raiders get their butts kicked, which happens all the time. I can say that because I'm a Raider fan. Anyway, coming back and then looking at a couple text messages that have gone to, hey, where are you, to, I knew this wouldn't work because of something that had happened on the date of, like, not opening a door, pulling out a chair, paying for a Diet Coke or something. Anyway, so all of a sudden, I just text back to, okay, well, I guess it wasn't going to work anyway, and it was just a sign for me that maybe this whole thing wasn't working, and I was sort of thinking of leaving the arena anyway, and I don't know. It was just kind of good for me to step out. But for a lot of people, it worked, but I would maybe suggest that if people maybe have a problem maybe finding or meeting people or having maybe a little lack of confidence communicating with people, but go into it with some tips, but I would also, considering hiring someone who's an expert like David, who maybe could help you navigate some of these questions. And, someone like David probably would have advised me, not to respond to every email if I'm not interested or something maybe at the beginning, and it would save me a lot of, stress and gray hair.
After you did. Oh, wow. We can go on in this conversation because this is really interesting what you just said. It's that power of no, and sometimes you don't want to have to deal with that uncomfortableness, so you just don't even deal with it. And then the bigger picture is I don't want to even deal with it anymore after that. So, yes, I know we only have 60 seconds left. Do you want to say anything just real briefly on this subject?
Yeah, I think that the same things would come out of the men and women's mouth online as offline, which is I could hear women saying that, offline also.
Yes.
And I think it really is a matter of simply of connection. And, it's a huge issue now in our culture. Men and women are having trouble with connection on all levels, and we really need to. That's something we really need to concentrate on. It's something that we need to focus on. It's not just an online issue. It's an issue. Culture in our culture.
It's a very big issue. And all I can say to that is that, if I hadn't gone online, if I hadn't been open, it would never have happened. And the reality is that I didn't think it would. Just the bottom line is be open. So we've got to close out our show. It has been an exciting hour on Life Bites Radio. All hour we've been talking about the power of no, the power of relationships. I'd like to thank my guest, David Giuliano, WithoutBoundariesCoaching.com. WithoutBoundariesCoaching.com. Jay Cruz, my producer, for also stepping in there and lending a little insight into the power of men and women. Well, I'd like to leave you with this thought. The power of no means the ability to say yes to yourself. It means to understand what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to. As David said, it's about being authentic with who you are. If you need to take a little time, if you're struggling with this area, don't say yes right away. You don't have to say no. You don't have to say yes. Just give yourself a little space to say no. As Annie Lamott, the author, said, no is a complete sentence. On that note, I'm Mina Bosky. Until next time, I will see you, and we will be talking and taking a bite out of life before life takes a bite out of you. Bye.